we are live.
Cool. All right. Hello, all. Welcome to the Brave Sound Podcast. This is a very special show because we have a very special guest and friend on the show today. But first, let me back up a moment. This is the show where we uncover the stories, processes, and worldviews behind some of New York City's most creative and artful musicians. And our very special guest today, Mr. Evan Sherman, absolutely fits the bill for this description. So, before we begin, I just have a brief introduction about Evan. Evan Sherman, originally from New Jersey, started playing drums at age 5 and had his first professional gigs when he was 13. Evan has been a sideman for some of the biggest names in jazz, having toured with Wynton Marsalis, Roy Hargrove, Ron Carter, Jimmy Heath, Branford Marsalis, Cyrus Chestnut, Benny Green, and many more. In addition, he has had his own big band for 6 years, the Evan Sherman Big Band, which you can often find playing at the Dizzy's late night sessions, as well as an assortment of other venues around the city. I'm very grateful to have Evan both as a mentor and friend, and there's a lot of things I'd like to cover today in the show, so let's begin. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
So, the first thing I'd like to start with is how Evan Sherman became Evan Sherman. So, do you have any vivid memories or a singular vivid memory of what sparked your interest first in jazz music and the drums?
Well, I would say it probably started when I was born. My brother, there's a picture of him playing guitar for me. I'm like just born, and he's playing guitar. While I'm a little baby, my dad played guitar, sang, played bass. My mom played piano, and the only thing left in the family was for a drummer. I had to be a drummer to play with my family, and that's how it got started. They were always they surrounded me with music, and as the years went on, I got a drum set when I was 5,
Mm-hmm.
and the drums were always in my life as like a little side hobby. I would play sports and hang out with my friends growing up. Um, Baseball was big, and I'm just realizing now that I think the reason I liked baseball was because the throwing that you do with the ball is the same throwing that you do with drumsticks.
Mm.
And I mean, that's my theory as of this week. I said, you know what, maybe that's why I liked baseball, because I had started with drums before. So anyway, eventually, as I grew a little bit older, I think I was 11, 12, 13. By the time I was 13, I had converted from baseball player to jazz musician. It took me a while to get over that hump, but by the time I was 13, I was like, I knew this is what I wanted to do, and I feel like I've just been going since then on a path that's been filled with a lot of great lessons, amazing relationships, new views on life, all kinds of exciting stuff.
And what were some of those early on relationships or views of life that helped you? I don't know about helped you, but took you away from ball playing and made you realize this is what you wanted to do.
Great question. I think I have an answer. Um, I think so. I grew up in New Jersey, and it was a lot of people who looked the same, from
Mm.
a pretty upper middle class background. And when I started going to these music programs, like there was one called the Jazz Standard Youth Orchestra. That was one of the first things I went to when I was 13. And I met people from all over the world, all different backgrounds, all different kinds of people. And that was one of my first introductions to like a little bit of the real world, that music and so-called jazz uh, it's such a diverse community, and a lot of what being a great jazz musician to me is when a player plays with a lot of sensitivity and uh, a group orientation of welcoming everyone that's playing, so then the audience can also be welcomed into what we're doing. To me, that's like one of uh, the big lessons that this music teaches has taught me. So meeting all these different people has led me to have relationships with uh, first it was Neil Smith, the great drummer who teaches at Berkeley now and is one of the most welcoming, generous guides for a lot of young drummers. Mark Whitfield Jr. is the one that
Mm.
introduced me to him, and then after Neil, just he would introduce me to someone else, and then someone else, and it just keeps snowballing. But
Mm.
like you mentioned, Jimmy Heath, I was going to his house for the last 5-6 years of his life. He was like 90 years old. I was in my early 20s, and you know that's a kind of relationship with a 90-year-old and a 20. You don't get that in many other fields.
Mm.
And to me, like getting to play with Roy Hargrove and the Marsalises and Cyrus Chestnut and all these people was like growing up and watching Derek Jeter play on the Yankees, getting to play with Derek Jeter or getting to play with Michael Jordan.
Mm.
Could you talk a little bit about how you met Jimmy Heath? I believe it was through Don Hahn, correct?
No, no,
Oh,
it was
okay.
John Lee. John Lee, yeah, same Don Hahn, John Lee. I see how it could get mixed up, but
Was this
John,
yeah,
huh?
you were working for you never worked for Don Hahn?
I did, but Jimmy Heath was not. That's not what where I came in contact with Mr. Heath.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
It was with John Lee.
yes, it was like Lewis Nash and John Lee were playing at the Blue Note with James Moody, um, Jimmy Heath,
Hmm.
Roy Hargrove, Lewis Nash, John Lee, and Cyrus Chestnut, I believe. Yeah, and I was 15 or 16, and
Wow.
sat in the front row. It was awesome. And afterwards, Lewis Nash brought me upstairs to the Blue Note. He had been like I had been following Lewis Nash around,
Hmm.
um, and that's where I got my nickname, Jewish Nash. But anyway, but anyway,
Lewis
so
gave
Lewis,
that to you?
no, it's long. That's a long. That's a whole other story. But Lewis brings me upstairs to the Blue Note, and there was like dressing rooms on both sides. So
Yeah.
Jimmy and James Moody were in the dressing room over there. So he said, hey, "Have you ever met Mr. Heath and Mr. Moody?" I said, "No, I've never met them." So they were both sitting on this couch together, like one of these old Blue Note couches with the black leather couch and all the great jazz musicians. I have so many memories. McCoy Tyner, all kinds of people sitting on those couches. But anyway, they're sitting next to each other, and Mr. Nash goes, "This is Evan. You would really like the way he plays." And I was like, "Oh man, that's a very nice, encouraging thing to say."
Yeah.
And that's when I first met Jimmy Heath. And then a couple years went by of me going to see his big band all the time with Lewis playing drums. And then pivotal moment came when I got to sit in with his big band at a rehearsal. The only thing was it was pivotal in the opposite direction that I wanted it to go. I was terrible. Like I knew instruments, and
Say it again. You're cutting out a little bit.
not this one that they called me up to play.
Um, can you hear it?
Me? No.
I think he cut out.
Yeah, maybe his Wi-Fi got shut off or something.
Oh,
Sorry,
there you
guys.
are.
I'm back. My whatever Spectrum Internet, is awful. I'm sorry. It's
No worries. We're glad to have you back.
um,
We were a little worried
so
there for
okay,
a
we're
second.
back. We're back.
Can you back
Anyway, I
up
was
to
yeah,
why it was a pivotal moment in the wrong way?
yeah. Here it goes. They called me up to sit in at the end of a rehearsal. Jimmy Heath Big Band. I'm like very excited, and didn't know they were going to call me up. I was just hanging at the rehearsal because that's what I was doing. I was in high school, and
Hmm.
what was I doing in high school? I was trying to be a jazz musician. So I was taking the train into the city, or my parents would give me a lift early on, and I went to the Michiko rehearsal studio,
Yeah.
and Jimmy Heath, Charles Davis, Louis Nash, the whole, all stars are playing, and I'm sitting there. And at the end of rehearsal, they go, "You want to let the kids sit in on one?" And I was like, "Okay." So I go up and sit in, and it's Sound for Sore Ears. Big intro, big conducted rubato intro with drum stuff happening in there, and I had never heard it in my life. And I'm just like, and Jimmy Heath goes, "Hey, you're covering up all the sound, man." and and then the rest of the song, I hung on by my fingernails, as my friend John Bean says. I was hanging on by my fingernails, and I was very disappointed after that. I thought I blew my chance at achieving this dream of getting to play with Jimmy Heath. I thought I blew it. And then a year later, and I was pretty like depressed about that for like 2 months.
Well, you
I
were
was just
16,
down.
right?
I know. So, I had nothing else to think about. I was just like, well, the world is over. I should try the baseball again. But anyway, um, a year later, I'm playing at John Lee's birthday party in South Orange. Frank West was there, Paquito, Dennis McCrell,
Jersey
Jimmy Heath.
crew. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm playing at the birthday party. Jimmy Heath comes up with his point and shoot camera, and he goes, "You grew, you grew," and
Oh,
and
wow.
uh, so that was a good moment. And then when I was 19, I saw Jimmy and Tootie at the Vanguard, and I was sitting
Wow.
next to Jimmy one night on the bench at the Vanguard, and Jimmy was saying, "Man, Nash can't make one of the big band gigs," and I was like, "Oh, I if you want, I'd be one of the high like I can't remember the exact words I used, but I said like that would just mean so much to me. Like if you so he said, "Okay, I'll give you a chance. Yeah, come to my house, check out the music." I used to go to his house all the time. He'd play the arrangements on the computer,
Hmm.
and he'd dance all the arrangements out. And then Sonny
Wow.
Rollins would call, and they'd talk, and I'd just be sitting there. I would always leave his house just like euphorically stimulate. Just, oh my God, I'd walk out. It's Louis Armstrong Park in Corona, Queens. Those
Mm,
days were unbelievable.
wow. Beautiful story. Beautiful
Yeah.
story. Yeah,
Thanks,
I
guys.
I knew you had played with them quite a bit, but I didn't know it had happened so early on and that he was such a he was so forgiving and of your 16-year-old bust.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's awesome. I want to
Yeah.
come back a little bit because this caught my attention, and then we'll definitely talk more about Jimmy later.
Mm.
But so I don't forget, the first thing you said when I asked you the question of your early relationships and worldviews uh, was everybody in your kind of upper middle class suburbia New Jersey neighborhood was the same. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you use jazz to not be the same, or what
Well,
that
yeah,
felt
yeah,
like at the time?
yeah. I always felt slightly different growing up. Like, but a lot of the people that I hung out with when I was like 4, 5, 6 years old, um, they came from a pretty nice upbringing. Their parents had big jobs in Wall Street, and my dad manufactures CDs since 1987. That's his job, and my mom has jumped around to different jobs. So while I was hanging with these people, I did feel like there was a little bit of a disconnect in our upbringings and our values in some ways. And I mean, they're beautiful people, but I think just naturally, the way they lived their life was different from the way I was going to live my life. And there was another pivotal moment where I like to mention this because I think you'll like this, Mike. It's about meeting Bernard Purdie.
Oh, okay.
I was 13 or 14, and the kids that I was growing up with, they started to want to drink alcohol. And I was like, why? I have no desire to do this right now. And my dad said to me earlier that day, he said, hey, if you want to go to jam session in New Jersey, I'll take you. So I was at my friend's house, and I had to make the decision. Am I gonna have vodka and Gatorade, or am I gonna go hang with my dad at a jam session? And I called my dad and I said, hey, can you come grab me and let's go to the jam session? And I'm playing the drums at the jam session that night in this big cowboy hat sitting in the front row. And it's Bernard Purdie. And I played for Bernard Purdie, and he was very encouraging. I remember it was like the most loving embrace that he could have given. It was like no weird vibes. It was just like the way a Bernard Purdie beat feels on the records.
Yeah.
So does that tell you a little bit, answer your question a little bit, Austin? I would also say, like, now being in a community with people from all over the world and all different backgrounds, that's what this music community, it brings to me. So it lets everyone be everyone can be themselves in this field.
Yeah,
right.
That's very interesting. And I also like what you said about your dad, was manufacturing CDs, and you just didn't see yourself as the same thing as all these, like, more, let's say, comfortable families. Yeah, I relate to that a lot because I grew up in a similarly privileged neighborhood. But my parents were divorced, and I was living in an apartment at the time. Everybody in suburbia was living in these big castle houses, and I always felt like, yeah, and their kids were always so, like, picture perfect, like blondes. They went to church together, known each other since they were 5, and then I was this immigrant kid, and so I think that was also a lot of probably my own motivation for getting into jazz as well. It was like
wow.
Everybody is so clean, and they're gonna go to University of Alabama, University of Texas, do their Greek life, and then get a nice job in daddy's firm or something like that. And I just felt like that's never gonna happen for me. That's not me. And then I found the music, and it gave me the right to be an individual rather than, like, just one of this whole thing. So yeah, thank you for sharing it. It made me think a lot about my own background. So
I like the way you articulated that. Thank you.
That story also, where you were just talking about how you had 2 separate things that you could have done. You could have stayed back and had Gatorade and vodka with your friends, or you could have gone to the jazz club. I think that tells a lot about your personality and just a lot of our personalities as being musicians in general, especially people that, that we're like, a lot of times, I know I grapple a lot before COVID about whether I should go out to hang at a session or go to the jam session, and it's not easy sometimes to want to leave at 12 a.m. or something at night because these jam sessions in the city start so late. But I always feel like when I go to the jam sessions, it was always worth it in the end because I always ends
Always?
up. Yeah, pretty
Always?
much. Yeah, pretty much. But maybe like one or two times not. But I always
Yeah,
maybe I run into you, Evan, or
I love
I
a jam session. You know that.
we do. Yeah.
yeah. So I want to ask you, what do you feel like you missed out on anything growing up, like socially, because you got into this music at quite a young age compared to a lot of people, and that means that you had to have a certain level of high proficiency just with the music, and that just takes hours and hours, countless hours of practice listening to music by yourself. So do you believe that you missed out on any opportunities socially, or
No, I mean, there were definitely moments. You making me think about when I first got to high school. I was in the stationary marching band. We didn't march. We just in the stands. Yeah,
stationary march?
yeah, yeah. We just sat. We were a sitting band in the bleachers. So after those
It's a
games,
pep
all
band.
the
Yeah.
all the kids that I grew up with were hanging, partying, and I couldn't catch up with them really because I was putting the drums away and it just drifted apart like that. So I had to I mean, I spent a lot of time with my family, my parents, which I think everything happens for a reason, and it was all great. I mean, I met Roy Hargrove at the jam session at Smalls because I used to go every weekend in high school to Smalls, and
Jeez.
I was the only 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid there for a couple years. Davis Whitfield and I, we would go together with our dads, and then eventually they let the two of us just go there on our own. So we'd be hanging there. We were 16 at after hours jamming with Roy, and
Wow.
that that was what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do at that time, and it helped me get to know Roy even deeper when I got older. So I'm very grateful that everything happened the way it did.
Mm.
Can we talk? Can you talk a little bit about your dad? You said he was manufacturing CDs, so he must have been aware of a lot of music, um, and clearly he supported you a lot. Can you talk about his influence and?
Well, I know he's watching right now. He's very he and my mom, they're watching. But uh, oh man, yeah, some funny stories. Well, my dad is really, he was like the strongest musician in our immediate family, and anything that I have is because he gave me all that he had in a way. I mean, he can pick up the guitar and play some standards. He could play some piano. He could sing Beatles and all kinds of blues, rock and roll, Stevie Wonder, you name it. Like, he's a really great all-around musician.
Mm,
He started very young and played in wedding bands, doing club dates in Long Island, when he was like 13 to 30 something years old. Then he had my brother. This was in 1988. He had my brother, and then he stopped, and then raised us to be about, when I was around in college, he started playing with a rock band again. So he's still very much involved in music. And another funny thing was, like, when I was really young, he would turn on the jazz station. I would hate it. And it became a thing, like, hey, don't misbehave, or I'm gonna turn on the jazz station. I'm gonna turn on WBTO.
How old were
Yeah.
you when this was a thing?
Oh, 7, 8, 9,
Okay.
around there. Didn't have, was just a stubborn little dweeb, and then your mind gets opened up, um, and then you start to hear the music of so-called jazz. Yeah, that's how it goes for a lot of people. A lot of people um, just haven't been. They're not open minded. If they're not open minded, they're not gonna be able. They're not gonna enjoy. They're gonna say they don't like jazz or whatever. That how could you not like jazz? That's like saying you don't like humanity.
Was there a specific record you remember that first sparked your interest in
I
jazz?
remember on the radio moaning. I loved moaning, and so what? And what's funny is my girlfriend gets those mixed up because they both have da da, and I used to get them mixed up too, you know. And they used to play "So What" all the time on WVGO, and I was like, this is kind of like the one I like, but it's not it. The other one has like because I was brought up on rock and roll, which is and Rolling Stones, so that's blues. So moaning is way more bluesy than "So What." I mean, don't kill me for saying that, but the melody of moaning, da 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 da, rather than ba 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 ba. It's different kind of aesthetics, right? Uh, so yeah, that reminded me of. I used to love when I heard moaning. I was amped. That was middle school.
Yeah, and then Lee Morgan's like opening solo line. I always hear it at Smalls for whatever reason. It's like the
Huh.
perfect club like hype line.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
energy that Lee comes in on that record is just iconic for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
I actually heard Mingus's moaning
Oh yeah.
with
That's a
the
good one too.
Ronnie Cuber on baritone. No, that's work song.
Bubble bop.
But that better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the one. I think my school played like a big band arrangement of it or something like
yeah.
Same
that.
here. Same here.
Right.
That's
Same
a
here.
good one.
And then I found the Blakey one like later on. But now looking back, that's kind of a little backwards. Funny, but
Yeah.
Could you talk about how your interest for jazz went reverse chronological though? Because so you discovered Monin, but I also know how much you're into Sonny Greer and Baby
Ooh.
Dodds. So could you just talk about
yeah.
how and I think I remember you telling me it has to do with your first drum teacher, right? Neil Smith. Was he talking? Did he tell you like to,
He
to
definitely
write?
mentioned all those. Yeah. I had a
Okay.
page. I had a page. He just was rattling off names. I
Yeah.
remember the first one he said was Baby Dots. And then Sonny Greer came up not too far after that, and Big Sid. And, at that time I had known I was really into Bill Stewart, Greg Hutchinson, Brian Blade, Jeff Tain Watts, Kenny Washington. Those were like the guys who I would see in the city. And then, of course,
Right.
Philly Joe, Art Blakey, Elvin Tone. That's everybody gets uh, introduced to those guys first for whatever reason in our generation.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I was lucky to have people to remind me over the years because um, it took me a while to take the time to dig into some of those guys like Baby Dots and Sonny Greer and Sid Catlett. Like, when I was in college, I found, okay, this is the time I'm gonna do that because I was playing at Dizzy's and we were having people dance to the music, which felt real nice. And
With your
the
big
more I
band.
learned, yeah, this is how the big band kind of got formed. But this was like what led me to kind of start doing the big band was we'd be playing in a trio or small groups,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd be listening to a lot of music, and it would kind of be fueling our own parties, in people's apartments in New York, and we'd be listening to like Roy Eldridge and Benny Carter, um, and the feeling of the record would just make you. It's like the Lee Morgan trumpet solo. It's like it's party, and I was getting into that spirit of the music, which I feel like not that many people. Well, whatever. So I'm getting into that kind of thing of the party sounds of drummers in a way. Like if
Wow.
you name like Shadow Wilson or Cozy Cole or um uh JC Hurd, like drummers like that, when they play, it's like all about getting down and having fun and having the beat be just awesome and danceable.
Mm.
So I started, because I was now in the situation of playing in a room that needed that. And here I am playing my little modern jazz drum 101 college jazz drummer stuff. And that's, I wanted to try to get a little bit more aware of how this music was created in the first place. And all my teachers have told me, and well, at this point, it's just kind of part of my natural instinct is like, yeah, keep digging for the roots. And if you want to sound like John Coltrane, do you think John Coltrane was listening to tapes of him playing in the future? No, he was listening to Lester Young and Dexter Gordon before him. And then who were those guys listening to? And that's the endless timeline chronologically that I've always been fond of. Pretty much.
Yeah. I think it's something that anybody who's been as familiar with Winton as you have been uh, would have thought of and been informed to always be looking back. But it is something about that era that you were talking about in particular with Eldridge, Benny Carter. Like I remember I transcribed like a Benny Carter solo for Jalil Shah, who I'm studying with, and I played him this Benny Carter solo, and he was like, "Man, this interval stuff Benny Carter is doing is just like stuff Mark Turner is playing now."
I love it.
And he couldn't stop like analyzing it and looking at it. He's like, "I can't believe this was made in like recorded in like the early 30s." And I hear a lot of that in Lester Young too, because he's such a granddad of the saxophone, great granddad, even at this point, where a lot of like the colors that he's playing over chords, and he wasn't schooled traditionally, like he just heard that way, and I think those same colors are a lot of the colors people are trying to like think they're discovering and exploring now. But
Yeah, a lot of young artists, I feel, maybe some new terms get invented, but the same ideas can be heard in the past as well. I feel, yeah, I remember having conversations with people about certain terms that are coins, by modern artists, not even in jazz, but in other art, in other fields as well. So, yeah, it is interesting. And going back to your point, Evan, about going back to the roots, I remember because you were mentioning Jeff Tain Watts, and I remember talking to him about that as well, and he also was talking about the importance of visiting the roots and just going to the absolute core of an idea before you can build on top of it. So that's like a really important point to make.
Evan, are you at all concerned about taking this information and then kind of consciously making it your own, or making it more modern in any way, or are you just taking from influences and then hopefully the conglomerate is already individual enough?
Well, I think it's a practice. And at this time, it's hard to it's very difficult to put this in practice. What I'm saying is thick delivery. Anyway, okay, so when you're on tour with a band and you're playing every night,
Yeah.
you get to like play. Hopefully, if you're in a great band, it's gonna naturally you're gonna naturally like be you, because you're traveling, you're on tour with um with this band. Like I'll take Roy Hargrove's band that I got to tour for like 3 weeks in Europe with. That's a tour that I found myself, and also like even playing with like Mark Carey, like I would lose control of what I was doing and just naturally just be playing. And that's when you come out, because at some point you're going to be tired from traveling, and all you're going to have is your natural instincts.
Mm.
And I think if people think about being original, um, that's perhaps not the most productive way of studying. I think if you study stuff and you're prepared and you have an awareness, and you're not ignoring the past, you're trying to understand it more, you will understand more of where we're at now. And there's some great quotes of Winton talking about this, and I know like everybody who talks about this, they sound like a broken record, but um, I have experienced, even playing on the road with my good buddies Emmett and Russell, when we play out on the road, our real personalities, can come out, because you're playing, you have this material, and it starts to just naturally become your own, and it's your decisions, you're the one in charge. And the only so I don't even see it. I see learning the history as just that's something that can help make you into a more uh aware person, perhaps. I don't know. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, that was great.
I tried to get in there.
Yeah.
Could you talk a
that's
little?
that's a big question.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Could
Sorry.
you talk a little bit about your own big band? I'll just give you a little brief story. So I first saw your big band. That's where I first met you. I think when I was 16 at the late night session in Dizzy's. And I remember it wasn't just music. It was there was some dancing going on with some of the people in the bands, and you had these bullhorns too. You were putting on like all these extra very entertaining qualities to it outside of the music. So
Would
where
this have been the play? The play, was it the play that we were doing with dialogue and with?
yeah, I think there was dialogue.
Oh, okay, you caught that, huh? That was like 3, 4 nights, and then it's done. But you were there.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a little bit about how that came about. Do you remember what year that was? 16, 15?
It must have been, yeah, because I was, yeah, so 2016.
Yeah. So I started doing a big band in 2014. It was all about making people dance. I had Lou Soloff, Jerry Weldon, Greg Gisbert, um, Mark Rose, Cyrus Chestnut, all like on the first gig, you
Wow.
know. And then the rest of
Sick.
the band was like young, like college, or like Tavon Pennicott and Bruce Harris, Alfonso, Russell Hall. Uh, then Frank Lacey started playing in it, and it just was like, it became this like family in a way. And we got a gig playing at the Caramore Jazz Festival. Um, and I was reading a lot about Duke Ellington, and Such Sweet Thunder suite that he did. He did that for the Stratford Festival in Canada. It's a Shakespearean literature vibe.
Yeah.
And the whole Such Sweet Thunder is a suite that he wrote for that festival. And then when he first played at Carnegie Hall, I think it was the Perfume suite that he wrote. So every time he get like a big gig, he'd make a special presentation for. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Perfume was later on. Black, Brown, and Beige was the first suite for
Carnegie
Carnegie
Hall,
Hall,
right?
January 23rd, 1943. Uh, that was Black, Brown, and Beige, right? So I wanted to do something special that related to all the individual talents in the band and personalities, just like Mr. Ellington did,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the pianist, Joel Wenhart, the young pianist that went to Juilliard, was always, and in this time, he was very excited. And my friend Russell Hall, they were living together, and
Still
they
are.
were, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And what's called, they were really into literature and operas and we were checking out all kinds of stuff on TV. Like, what are we checking out today? Opera, ballet, what? Like, so there was this thing called Street Scene, which is an American opera, they call it, um, with words by Langston Hughes and music by Kurt Weill. 1943, 45, 47, one of them odd numbers or something. So Street Scene, I watched that, and the next day I went to have lunch in a sushi restaurant and wrote this thing on my notepad on my phone, my little iPhone. In like 5-10 minutes, I had an outline of a play that featured everyone in the big band as a character in a narrative with organized movement, dance, cues. Mario will come from the back of the club. Frank Lacey will come from,
I remember that, yeah.
So it was a whole thing, and it was influenced by the other things that we were doing. And Jazz at Lincoln Center were kind enough to give us this opportunity to play. We did a few nights, late sets at Dizzy's, which you saw, Mike, and then we did it in the afternoon in Caramore, and it got mixed reviews. Some people thought it was absolutely hilarious and wonderful, and James Zoller was telling me that that Benny Powell, the great trombonist, with Basie, I believe, and Frank Foster, apparently he had this idea of like making a play for a big band with everyone being a character, but never happened. And then there were some people at Jazz and Lincoln Center who kind of didn't like it and almost would request that I didn't do it. But I had to do it because I was checking out what Wynton was saying about Duke Ellington, and then going into that world of Duke Ellington, which is a lifelong journey. And that's what inspired. And if I didn't do it, I would be very. I'd have that regret, but I don't have any regret of doing it. If people did, some people, it was too much. It was, and but I would say it brought everyone in the band really close. Like Frank Lacey in the rehearsal, and like Frank Lacey and Jerry Weldon and they were like, so these older cats are like, what the hell is going on? Like Joel is Joel transformed from a man into a woman in the story, and Frank Lacey was so they were so into it. At some point in the rehearsal, Frank Lacey like got so serious, he stopped everyone and he's like, guys, if we are going to do this, we have to do it. We have to really do it, And it brought everyone together like a family. James Zoller and Brian Peresci were the grumpy trumpets, and they would bicker at each other in the trumpet section. And they'd be doing all kinds of stuff. It was so amazing. The music took on a new meaning. And I think that's what the music needs. If the music that we're playing doesn't have any intention, whether it's to make people dance or to tell a story or to create some sort of narrative, it's not going to be enjoyed as much as someone watching Netflix where there's a story and a narrative.
True.
And it's all art. And I think jazz, being music from 100 years ago, it's hard for us to get all of it. Jimmy Heath used to say, our history cannot become a mystery, right?
Yeah, well, very cool. I yeah, I had a thought in my mind. I'm trying to come back with it. Could you maybe elaborate on, because you never wrote any type of screenplay before that. So could you just, like, how much inspiration was it from the thing you watched on TV? What was it called?
Street scene.
Street Scene.
Street scene.
How much inspiration was from there? Could you maybe just could you just like give a little synopsis of like what the story was you would do during the set?
Right. Well, you have to introduce characters. I mean, it's a lot of it is like stuff you learn in English class or something, and over time. But watching Street Scene was, I remember watching it in this very room, and just being like, wow, like I want to try to tell more of a story with the music. I think it will help the music tell a story. So it's hard for me to remember all the little details of this. But we wrote a script. The script is a thick packet that everyone had. Everyone had a character in the story, and the repertoire that we had, we threaded it together so that the pieces told a story. It's hard for me to remember exactly what all that was. I haven't looked at it or thought about that play in a long time, but I hope to try to do it again. But it was very personal to the people that were in that particular band. In the spirit of Duke Ellington, I wanted everyone's real voice to be heard. In a way, it was just like a funny, a slightly absurd view into what the big band was like. Patience Higgins was the narrator. The title was called, the title of the play was called A Story of Patience. And Corey Wilcox was being courted by Marielle. Julian Lee was Jerry Weldon's son. Mariel was Ben Wolf's daughter.
You got Ben Wolf in this too.
Yeah, Ben Wolf was like, he'll tell you about it. We all enjoyed it, and it brought out new things in the music. So, yeah, like that was a really fun time. Amazing.
I think it's really beautiful how you were able to get this large span of generation, all these different generations of musicians, like what you were saying about Frank Lacey, how he was like if we're doing this, we got to do this. And I think that's really an amazing thing, because I feel like a lot of people, if they show up to rehearsal and they're expected to be like saying these lines and stuff, they'll be like, I didn't sign up for this. But I think to create something like that and have everyone involved and just elevates everything so much more. And I really agree with what you said, and that's a really good way of putting it. If Netflix has a dialogue and plot and the music doesn't, why are people going to listen to the music instead? And that goes back to a discussion we had a few years ago when you were when we were talking together about drum solos. Do you remember? And you use this example, I think, for other people too. But you were like, tell me a story, something that recently happened to you, and I told you something, and then you were like, okay, so try to demonstrate it now. Say the exact same story on the drums, and it was really effective in something gathering the thoughts the right way to make it just more convincing as a solo.
Can I?
Yeah, sometimes we get lost in the jazz school mindset, but that stuff to me is it helps us get out of that maybe.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Austin?
I was gonna bring up this. There's a big like marketing guru named Seth Godin, and he's a New York Times best-selling author like 19 times, something absurd. And he was talking about like why do authors, they never like they're a very supportive of community. Like they all read each other's shit and they all review each other's stuff and they're all aware. Like why is it not so competitive? And he was saying that the average American reads like less than one book a year, and they watch so much more Netflix or something. So the problem is not author versus author, it's us versus other, right? Like reading a book versus distracting yourself with something else. And I was thinking it's the exact same thing with jazz. It's the problem is not that like it's me on the gig or you on the gig. It's the problem is not enough people are taking the time to listen to this like more acoustic and less produced and live and improvised and all those things, that type of music. And so I think it really takes projects like this, the thing you were doing with your big band, really innovative stuff to capture the attention of real people, because it really is not a competitive scene in and of itself. It's us versus other. It's jazz versus Netflix. It's jazz versus Avengers. It really is. It's a battle for their attention, for honestly funds, and cultural importance. It's all these things. So all power to you for making that amazing production. I had one other thought. Sorry to ramble, but
Go ahead.
when you were talking about the importance of, well, we're still talking about the importance of stories and characters, right? And that's literally how I feel of Kind of Blue, in a less explicit way than like a real play, but the personalities in that Kind of Blue band, like when Cannonball comes in with his blues, like he's like you get the sense of, oh, this is a new character appearing, and then Train comes in and he plays the way Train plays, and then Bill Evans comes in with those great voicings, and then Miles Davis is all moody and stuff, and you're kind of following the personalities. And that, I think that's one of my favorite parts of listening to a band that I'm quite familiar with. Like wouldn't it be amazing to hear Charlie Parker play over a Kurt Rosenwinkel tune? And why is that? Because you want to see like his personality, his character, how he would be in this situation, and like how would it be if people talk about like Wynton Kelly versus Bill Evans on Freddie Freeloader, and like what would it have been like if Bill Evans was on Freddie Freeloader on Kind of Blue. So I think even without doing a whole play or a story, like we can bring our person, just like you were saying, on the drum solo, bring our life experience to the way we play and the way we improvise and the way we tell stories. Just a thought. But Evan, do you have or is this the type of thing you think about when you're improvising and you're thinking about stories at all, or when you're listening?
Well, you made me think about Charlie Parker, because from what I've heard, he was quite a scholar. He to me, when you listen to a guy like Charlie Parker play, you hear that you hear just he naturally plays in a way where it's like it's a story. I mean, there are people that have made funny like dances to his stuff, like where they're arguing with each other, like between Charlie Parker and like Miles or Dizzy. I think that those guys would naturally, their minds were in a different place than where our minds are. And they were playing every day, pretty much. The Basie band, Ellington band, they had like matinees, 3 sets at night. After they would be playing for like 4 or 5 hours every day. It was just natural, the natural way that they lived comes out and the natural way that we live is going to come out too. So
Mm.
um, if it's a lot of it is mental, I think, keeping your head in a place where you can be really like just naturally reactive and not think too much. Because Josh Evans, he says, you know, the less thinking, the better. I love that. Um, and yeah, it's just like, just try not to think too much and play with each other and just exist with each other, human to human.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of those guys were doing. And Bird was on such a high level intellectually and could play the saxophone just real easily, I guess, right?
Well,
So
he
he
has a
was a
very similar
great
quote
expressor.
to the
Mm-hmm.
one that you said by Josh Evans. He said like you practice um to you practice all the time and then you get on stage and you throw it all away, right? The stage is the
Yep.
time to be in the moment. But I also, back to what you were saying about they were playing every night. I think it's so easy to take the pressure off. I mean, not so easy, but easier to take the pressure off of a playing situation. If you're there every night, that's like your gig. You're not like overly stressed about it. It's just another night at the club for you. Versus now, there's like
Becomes like doing anything. Just
right, like washing
going in, brushing
dishes.
teeth. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
That's your work.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you, how do you think the scarcity of work in modern society has not modern society in the modern jazz community? We don't have that anymore. How do you think that's affected us musically?
Well, I think people are going to have to be even more creative. There's going to be more branches, which is great. It's great to have branches and branches coming out of the tree of jazz that Duke Ellington refers to,
Mm.
with many blossoms. And I mean, and I've talked to Ron Carter. He talks about it being like musicians have lost their greenhouses where they can't really grow at the moment. Like
Mm.
they can't be together as easily. I mean, there was 4 months where I was playing on the street a lot, and that just has recently kind of come to a season end because we're in December now. Um, but that was a way that I found a way to store some drums on the Upper West Side, and that was a pretty successful way of keeping everyone. I got to play with so many great musicians, and cats were getting a few dollars in their pockets every time they came out to play, and there was a good response from the people. And I always think about this music going like around, like you can't just play and have it feels weird when there's nothing coming back at you. So when you have a live audience, that's you're starting to like cook. It's like having the heat and the oil. You can't just have one or the other.
Mm.
So when you have that live audience, now you can start to really be in the moment, not just with the musicians, but with the people, and the audience. The way that they're feeling may direct you to play this tempo, this song, this mood, this.
Yeah.
And it just, you want to remain kind of in control, but affected by all of the elements. And it's making me think about Roy Hargrove, the way that he would every time he'd play a song, it was like the greatest tempo that he could possibly have come up with, the best song, like to keep everyone's minds focused and united. So
Wow.
that's what this music is. That's what the music is about, more than, to me, like navigating chord changes, right?
Word.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying before when you were on the road, how you have to just forget everything and play in the moment. And it kind of goes back to what Austin you were talking about as well with that Charlie Parker quote and yeah, Would you be able to talk a little bit about your experience on the road with Roy Hargrove when you were touring with him in Europe for those few weeks?
Well, it was such a dream come true, and he was so nice. We the first place we went to was France, and I remember when we got to Paris, um, that night he was like, yeah, let's go hit up the jam sessions, and we got in a car, and he's like, so E, like, uh, is this your first time in Paris or something? And I was like, well, I was here when I was 11, so I wasn't really here. He's like, oh, I'm really happy I could bring you out here. Hey, look, it's the Eiffel Tower. And we were just like in the car, and after the first gig with him, and this just goes along with the theme that we're talking about. After the first gig, we played in a smaller town in France before Paris, and he was just, it was real encouraging. He just wanted me to just let it all out, you know? And he was real like patient with because I think he had been like kind of a raw talent, and he had the older cats, like he would talk about John Hicks and uh, just countless mentors of his, George Coleman, the way that he would interact with Roy at Bradley's, and how he would just keep the level of the music and the integrity of the music always where it should be, and while still having a good time, and having the whole place be united and together, having a wonderful time together. So anyway, he was very patient with me, very encouraging. First gig, I was like, trying my best, and afterwards, he was real nice. He gave me a really nice energy, and when we got back to the hotel, we were walking to the elevator, and he was like, excellent job, and I said,
That's a good
thank you, Roy.
impression.
Yeah, I was like, thank you, Roy. And he was like, don't be afraid to make a mistake. That's when the music happens. It's how you get out of a so-called mistake or whatever. And that's the Miles Davis. That's the Charlie Parker. It's a tradition. It's like the secret codes that have been passed on from tradition, oral history, that kind of thing. And then the next night, because he said, don't be afraid to make a mistake. So the next night we're in Paris, and the club there, Roy was like a god at New Morning Paris. They were just, I had never felt an audience that like giving that much love to the artist, to Roy. It was like they loved Roy, and they were so encouraging. They'd be, during the drum solos, they'd be cheering me on and stuff, and I'd just be, I don't know, I'm doing my best. But after the first set at New Morning, I went kind of cut loose. I said, I'm making mistakes. He just gave me permission to make as many mistakes as I want. And it's in those moments when your true shit comes out. It's like, it's not you thinking about this Philly Joe lick. It's you just whatever, who's Philly Joe. That's more what the feeling is. And after that set, sorry, I'm dragging this out long, but after
No, please.
After that set, he says, thunder and lightning, and he was like, yeah, go in, don't be afraid to like put your foot in it. And that was a great that was very freeing, a very freeing feeling to feel like not self-conscious about what you're doing. And at that time, I mean, I watch it and I'm like, oh God, I wish I could do it now. I've practiced a little more, gotten a little bit better just to put more time in on the drums. But I'm still learning from those Roy experiences. I'll always be learning. He gave me enough to think of. He gave a lot of us, I'm sure you all ran into him at certain points, and he's still kind of teaching from the other side.
Yeah.
We miss him, but yeah. Oh, Roy, a lot of stuff, a lot of great experiences.
I mean, that was a lot of great stuff. But are there any other tour nuggets you could leave us with? Just
Oh yeah, I mean, he just
those are
always
gold.
he was always trying to play everywhere we went. And he'd have to get dialysis like every other day,
Oh yeah, it was like that, huh?
and he was living he just was living to play,
Right.
and he just always wanted, yeah, he was always down to check the music out, and the way that he taught the band and the way that he ran his band, like he had such a wide repertoire, and he was also just hilarious. Like I was in the studio with him as well a couple times, and he would just say the most funny stuff. You'd finish a take and he'd have all these different voices. I can't do them, but like all these just hilarious voices, like, well, that was romping along. You know, you just be like the most funnily timed. Yeah, he just was a great mystical, very in touch with the universe. I feel like he was just really, he read all the time. You know, when he would go dialysis, he had a book about this thick, very thick book, and he was just a real smart person. Had a challenging life, but was very inspiring. And I first heard his music when I was like 12, 13. I heard the RH Factor, and I was just drawn to his energy since then. Yeah. And he was all about the music, and being, you know, being pure with the music, even though he had like a superstar situation where he was a star, he was famous. Like I remember we went up to the club in Paris, and there was like a big line outside Duke de Lombard. Me, Roy, Amin, Salim, and I think Tata Taka. Four of us get out of the car, and there's a big line, and Roy just goes, "I'm gonna have to pull my celebrity shit." And we walk up to the door, you know, because there's a big line, and they let us in. You know,
Oh wow.
it was just funny the way that he's, you know, if other people said that, it would sound kind of egotistical, but he never had that. He was a humble servant of the music, and I mean, we'd be learning so much music on the road. After the first night, he was like, let's play Little Man, like for Little Man on the drums, Art Blakey, Charles Fambro tune. Like, so we learned it the next day, played it on the gig. He would teach us a tune, this tune, How Am I to Know? We learned it on the first day in sound check. Miles Davis played it like a medium swing kind of thing. And then 2 weeks later, after not hearing about that song once, he called it in the middle of the gig. He goes, "How am I to know?" And Tata and Amin start sweating, and yeah, I don't have the chord changes to worry about. I kind of remember how it goes, but like he would put the band on the spot on the gig, and that would really fuel the energy in the room. He knew how to. He was a master of energy. So stuff like that. And then he would also know when it's time to play something that everyone can really chill on. You know, it's like curate. It's all curating. You know, knowing how to shift through different energy.
Could you talk about the way you would approach it? Like, let's say you were in Roy Hargrove's band, and I really liked your analogy that I mean, not literally, but you would say, like, who is Philly Joe Jones? Like, when you get to that certain peak, when you're like so invested in what you're doing, and I think I know the feeling you're talking about when you're pushing yourself to the max of trying to open up completely. So there's that stretch of the music, which a lot of jazz musicians strive for, and they push for that level of energy, and the thing is, like mistakes can happen when you're pushing yourself to that extent, but it seemed like such a welcoming environment to welcome mistakes just for the sake of getting to that energy level. So what other so let's say, like, I've seen you play the past 2 years at the Village Vanguard with Emmett Cohen and Ron Carter. Could you talk about the similarities and the differences between playing with Roy Hargrove's group and playing in that trio?
Sure. So Roy, the Roy thing, I had to learn a lot of music when I got called for the gig. It was in February for an April tour. And then there was another time where I got called for the big band, and that was like a couple weeks notice. So what I do when you get those calls, and I've done this with Jimmy Heath's bands, and when I toured with Branford for a couple weeks, you learn everybody's music. You have to learn it. You have to get you just have to learn the music. And that for me led to me learning a lot of different parts, whether it was chords, bass, piano. Sometimes once I see the changes, I'll say, oh, okay, this is what it is. And playing with Ron Carter, he would always say, you have to see the rhythms, Mr. Sherman, see the rhythms. And then you start to see it. It can come a little bit, it just becomes closer to you. So anyway, I had to learn tons of music with Roy, and the people in the band were like, yeah, we never know what he's gonna play. He just starts playing, and you just have to join in. It was amazing. I don't know anyone else like that. I hope that one day I can have a band that can run like that, because it was so fun. It was just no BS. Oh, it was wonderful. So playing with Ron and Emmett, I met Emmett when I was 13, 14. He was like 17. He was a senior. I was a little younger. And he was just in high school, at the end of high school. And we played in New Jersey, jam sessions, Cecil's, trumpets. He was playing organ a lot, piano sometimes. And then when he came back to New York, we kind of reunited and played with Russell Hall in trio. And when I was 19, after playing with Jimmy Heath's big band, was recommended to sub in Ron Carter's big band. And that was real. I mean, I grew up loving Ron Carter just like everybody. I mean, you listen to Ron Carter and it just makes you excited. Those bass lines are just, you name it, right? So playing with Ron it's been 7 years since that first meeting with him, and he teaches you a lot about how to be a professional, be prepared for the gig, take care of your monitor when it's time to take care of the monitor. Don't take care of it right before the gig starts. That was something I did in Ron's band. I was like, it was like everyone's on stage. Can I get a little more piano? And Ron's just like, and that's what young, that's being young. It's all right. He didn't hold it against me, but those were some lessons playing with Ron. I mean, just playing at the right balance as in terms of the drums and the bass. Like when I play with Ron, it's like he has so much to give to the band sound from the bass, and so many drummers have a tendency to play in a way that covers up a lot of bass players now. So like the bass drum, for instance, can like easily minimize a bass player's presence in the music. So like playing with Ron Carter is like, you listen to great records, the bass drum does not pop out of the chest like how so many cats do it now. It's boom, boom, boom. It's light. the bass is like the human chest, and the bass drum is inside of it to give it the little pulse sometimes. And if it starts sticking out, you know something's wrong. So Ron Carter, his bass is like the chest, and oh man, just he told me a couple things. One was he had me clap on all 4 beats, so I was really excited playing with Ron, and he would always do these ba-doom doom 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 shaka doom doom doom, you know. So he would do a lot of off beats, and I'd be so like, I'm right here with you, Ron, right here, I hear you, you know. I'd be doing the off beats on the cymbal, but then he took me outside the jazz standard, rest in peace, jazz standard.
Yeah.
He took me outside and said, Mr. Sherman, there's 2 things I want to tell you. This was after the sound check. He says, if you're clapping on all 4 beats, so he had me clap on all 4 beats, and then he started clapping on off beats, so it sounded like this. Starting to adjusting the chocho on everybody now. Yeah. But one person is doing that, and the other one's doing the off beats. So when that's happening, 2 things are happening. 2 things. Trying to get in the camera. 2 things. I can't. The opposite camera is messing me up. Anyway, so we start matching each other on the off beat. He says, now 1 thing is happening. So I know you're excited, but when you play your quarter notes, I'm trying to create another texture. And if you keep following me, and Benny Green said this to me early on, he was like, man, you're taking out the carpet from underneath me when you do that. So I had to kind of, the balance of reacting to the people that you're playing with, but also remaining supportive and solid for them to have a platform to jump from and dance on. That was a lesson in that. The other thing was Ron said that my ride cymbal got weaker towards the end of the night. Mm-hmm. Who's going to tell you that?
Yeah.
Ron Carter told you that. So, I mean, that made me, and even David Wong would say, hey man, never let the ride cymbal, you know, all these guys have reminded me, the very important things in this music that affect everyone else's experience. You want everyone that you're playing with to have a positive experience, and you want people in the audience to have. So if all those things are in place, that you're doing your job. And that these are kind of Ron Carter philosophies. So I'm still very much trying to improve in these areas that Ron champions. He's very big on just, and even Winton told Russell Hall and I, said, can you guys play 1 chorus, just quarter notes? I bet it's very difficult to do. Playing great time, everyone just play quarter notes, and bass players play simple stuff. Ron Carter says the first chorus, I'll play some simple stuff for a soloist. Second chorus, I start to get a little bit more in their ear. Third chorus, you're mine. So these are how some of the masters think. And to me, they're great ways to understand how to play, how to hear this music as deeply as you can.
Yeah, I love this conversation of, like, you know, the bass is in your chest, and one thing is happening is all these like super. What's that?
That just came. I'd never thought of it like that, but I would hope that maybe that will help describe the relationship.
No, definitely there's something very physical about the bass that's lower, and where you feel it in the body, no doubt, sonically and physically, you know. But it's this is kind of the stuff we can get into in music school a lot, you know, like just really nuanced stuff with people like John Riley or Mark Carey. You know, they're always talking about some real stuff like this. But I also want to ask you about some issues with our music and how we're perceived by other people, because this is stuff that we all understand, and it certainly makes a big difference to the way the music feels and to audience members. But I think, certainly a lot of it just goes over people's heads. They don't have to know everything technically, but I'm just, we're in a position where the music is struggling, in a lot of ways. And so how do you go about inviting the audience into the feeling of all these nuanced things you're doing in a culture where we're so not about nuance? Everything's so in your face and like told so explicitly.
Well, not everyone is going to get it. Not everyone's going to get it. You have to be true to your beliefs. It's like growing up, you have to make those decisions like as to what path you're going to take and what path is available to you. I have found myself just on this path that has been I've been always trying to keep mentors, keep in touch and have mentors. And they've led me to believe that, well, here's the quote: if you take care of the music will take care of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if to me, when I'm playing, like I've been playing outside and people have the choice to walk by and ignore it, or they can stay and listen, or they can. And then the little kids, like the little ones, they tell you a lot about how you're playing, because if they like it, they'll dance. If they don't like it, they won't. So older folks have too many worries and inhibitions to be such a pure reactor like how these little kids are. And that's been really great. Charles Mingus said, little children and animals like my music the best. Charles Mingus. So when the dogs come by and start barking, sounding like Billy Higgins on a snare drum, that's what I like. I think the music will always have varying degrees of success in pop culture and financially, and that's just like the journey that, and if I can just stay alive and survive by immersing myself in learning more about this and trying to perform it and spread it. That's my goal at the moment. And
Yeah.
as the music industry has been very affected by pandemic, I have hopes for the future to when we are able to congregate again and gather. There's a video of Billy Higgins at his world stage, and he takes like a couple minutes just to be like, isn't it amazing that we can all be gathered here together? And the people were probably like, yeah, okay. But now we watch it and it's like, oh wow, yeah, it really is a blessing that for us to be able to be in the same room, just sit next to someone, have your leg touching some stranger in the theater. And so I think throughout, people may not be ready for what the music, like Davis Whitfield, my friend, always likes to say, hey, people like walked out of Train's concerts in the 60s and
Yeah.
people may not be ready for it when it's being done, but if you stay true to your values and do your thing with honesty, integrity, and purity, I don't think you can have many regrets if you're just trying to do something good, something nice for someone else.
That's key. No, it's not. It doesn't necessarily guarantee success or financially speaking or what have you, but it definitely no regrets. You know, you'll always have your integrity. Nobody can take that away
Yeah,
from you.
and I mean, I've up until now, like I've found that when I stay true to these things, I'll be surprised. I'll get a nice opportunity. NBC is doing a story for the Today Show about what we've been doing outside. Like,
I think, yeah, I saw
no,
that.
nobody hustled that. That just came out of the blue. That was just, we were playing Bud Powell by Chick Corea on the street, and a woman comes up and says, "Hey, I love what you guys are doing." Really? You liked the chords that we did on the bridge? No, it's not about that. It's we're doing something. We're doing something real. It's for something much bigger than all of us.
Can you
Yeah.
can you talk about this project you did for the ABC reporter Peter Jennings? It's a charity concert called Jazz for Jennings, right?
Yeah. Well, I got a call one day a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, from James Moody's widow, Miss Linda Moody. And today is actually the anniversary of James Moody's death. But she said, "I see you've been doing this and that around New York." And James Moody used to do this thing for Peter Jennings. Max Roach started it. They've had Hank Jones, the Heath brothers, Wynton, Roy, you name the jazz musicians. They've been to this place in the Hamptons to play for this charity called the Bridgehampton Child Care Center. It's the Bridgehampton Child Care Center provides care to children in the Hamptons of families that are working for maybe some of the upper class families that live in the Hamptons, the people that they hire, to the nannies and people like that. So their children need a place to go as well. So that's what the Bridgehampton Child Care Center is. And Max Roach was friends with the great ABC World News journalist Peter Jennings, who passed away a few years ago. And I guess when Peter Jennings passed away, they took a few years off, and then they started doing it again. And I was more than happy to bring bands up every year to play for an event, for a nice outdoor tent with a lot of people who would donate to this worthy cause. And I brought up, I think it was 3 or 4 years in a row, and we were supposed to do it this past summer, but it wasn't able to happen. But the people that are involved are very nice, and it's again another opportunity to play music for people that probably aren't listening to Sam Jones and Cedar Walton, but we're giving them a little taste of it, and it makes them happy.
Yeah. And who? Apologies, but who is Peter Jennings, and why did Max Roach and all these people who participate after hold him in significance?
Well, I think they hung out together. They were buddies. Peter Jennings was a very famous anchor. I think the 80s and 90s, I think he was probably most visible. He was like the Walter Cronkite, or modern day, I think Lester Holt is like the new night anchor right today. I don't really watch cable that much anymore.
Hey, Evan, sorry to interrupt. Your mic is like on your zipper.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
I think it's the green thing.
This is the mic here.
Yeah. You just need to move
okay,
that'll be cool. That'll be cool.
Okay.
That'll be cool.
My bad.
No worries.
So Peter Jennings and Max, they apparently they were talking one day, and Max said, "Hey, how about we put on a concert?" That's how it happened. That's the story I was told. and then it became a yearly concert called Jazz at Jennings, and it was a nighttime thing when they would do it. And it's in the Hamptons, so like Percy Heath used to live in Montauk, and he used to fish a lot, so apparently he was very involved.
Wow.
And they would just have like big jazz parties and help raise money for this child care center. Yeah.
So I feel like this work. Actually, I didn't really know this about you, that you were involved in this project, but I do know how you act on the scene in general, and the way I would describe it is very fostering, especially for younger musicians coming up. For instance, your big band is full of, well, when you were in college, people your age, but still now a lot of younger people that maybe their colleges don't have big bands, or just they want to go out and play different types of music that isn't offered. So I always saw this about you. Would you, so yeah, like do you see yourself in pursuing this kind of maybe line of work, or starting your own type of organization, or something along those lines maybe in the future?
Sure. I mean, it's all about sharing the whole uh that whole thing. I guess I was the young kid coming in, wanting information, wanting to be mentored, coming up, and now I'm 27, and now there's a whole bunch of people younger than me that may want to learn about some of the things that I was around and picked up from the mentors that I had. And I love to share, as I'm sure this video, I can't stop talking. But yeah, I think that's like one of the great things about being a musician and being in New York City. And I miss the jam sessions at
Yeah.
Smoke with Mark Carey and Smalls with all those people. And so those were great opportunities for us to be in person with each other. And now we just got to keep figuring out ways and being creative. And I think we're all creative. It's great that you guys are doing this. This is a way that we can stay connected. So um, I'm happy to be here. I feel like we're just doing what we can right now, and further down the line, sure. If if there's a desire for anything else, to an environment for me to share music with people, I'd be happy to be in that.
Mm.
So, something specifically that the reason I brought that up is because I remember one night at Smalls we were going, and you were unhappy, passionately about how the session was running, because you felt that everyone was playing not for the unity of the whole, but more just working their shit out, or working on their chops. And yeah, I remember riding the subway back with you, and you were really passionate about that, and how important it is to keep that community sense, and how some guys like Roy Hargrove, who would go to Smalls every night, they would help keep that laser focus of everyone working together. And
They kept the music where George Coleman had at Bradley's, and Junior Cook. And I mean, these are precious traditions that need to be preserved. And everyone can get a little greedy and selfish. We're all human. But the music and it's like that's why the old guys were there to foster guys like Roy, so that Roy could foster us. And then now it's up to us to take the lessons that we get from our great mentors.
Yeah, so that is why I brought this up, because maybe it has to do, it's something I've noticed about your personality, uh, especially as someone that really takes a lot of care and time in fostering younger musicians, and kind of creating, especially even when you run a jam session, creating a certain environment with a certain level of expectation that a lot of some other people that run jam sessions wouldn't take the care to do. So, and I'm like talking to you now and realizing how you have all these older influences that you've had the opportunity to hang around with. Jimmy Heath, for instance, when we first started talking about this conversation, I think a part of it could be attributed to you having so much experience hanging around these older generations of musicians that already had these lessons embedded in them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And I was the one being schooled on stage at the Blue Note with Jimmy Heath and Steve Davis sitting right next to me, saying, you know, Dennis McCrell and Lewis didn't have to play it that loud. You know, hey, that's tough love. That's good. Hey,
Yeah.
and I've been cussed out by Branford, Eric Rivas, Joey Colorazzo. I'm thankful for that. Ben Wolf has always enlightening things that they may not be things that most kids want to hear, because, you know, Branford has a whole video about kids, students, all they want to be told is how good they are, right?
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And luckily, I mean, it's not easy to get this constructive criticism and to be made feel like you may have made a mistake or do something wrong. But I think once you have a few experiences, you start to get a callus, and it's like, all right, bring it on. You know, I'm learning. And they're badges of honor.
Yeah, I'd be proud of hearing that from any of those people we mentioned. It's also funny to me how so much of these kind of nuggets can be summed up in one sentence, yet they're so profound, and yet we're still always working at them, you know? I guess it does take some years to actually live them. You know, a lot of these things are stuff we've heard, but something about our psychology, our natural tendencies, we have to chip away at it, I think.
Yeah, like in 10 years, you look back and you see it from a new perspective than when it was maybe when it was said to you.
Yeah.
You didn't understand it the same way. So yeah, it's true, and that I think can provide solace for us, and making us feel like, okay, it's okay. Just be patient. Just patience. Take your time. Ray Drummond says, straight ahead, strive for tone. Simple. Just
Simple.
Cedar Walton used to tell Joe Farnsworth to slow down. So now Joe Farnsworth says to me, he says, slow down, man. So I'm practicing, and I'm like, you know, real slow. And just slow down. Yeah, that's we have to embrace our elders. They have more experience than us, even though we as young people, we think we know everything.
Can you describe, I know it's hard to do, but I've watched you play for, I guess I met you for about 4 years ago, I would say, so since you were 23. But I want you to try to describe how you evolved as a drummer. And it from the drum choices, the cymbal choices. I know you evolved a lot cymbal wise recently with the Pisces, but
the Pisces.
But not just the gear. I also want to hear how you evolved taste wise from being in college at MSM to now.
Well, I'll try to do a quick. So from the first day I got the drums, I was playing along the Rolling Stones, and I always heard a boom pop boom pop. That's what I liked first. That's what and I always thought the hi-hat, I couldn't really hear the hi-hat. I didn't think you had to do that. So but that was me at 5 years old, and as time grew on, I got a little tired of playing rock and roll, and when I first heard those jazz things and started to see people play it live, I was like, man, these people can do whatever they want. I want to do whatever I want. I don't just want to go so jazz opened up that world. So like I said, the first people I gravitated towards: Art Blakey, Jimmy Cobb, Philly Joe, Tootie Heath, Art Taylor, so on. That kind of era of music. When I got to, and then of course I loved the guys that were playing. I used to see Greg at Jazz Standard Memory. I sat in the front row. I was like 14 at a Jazz Standard. Saw Greg Hutchinson with Taylor Eichste,
Wow.
Harish. Who else was there? I can't remember the horn players.
Was Gretchen
Anyway,
there?
Greg Hutchinson's, no, she wasn't there. But Greg Hutchinson's bass drum beater flipped onto my lap. I was in the front row, and I went and put it back in the pedal and screwed it in. And I would see Tane, Lewis Nash, Kenny Washington, Bill Stewart. I used to see Bill Stewart all the time. I've already said this, but so anyway, I get to college, and I really wanted to play with Roy because I had this relationship with Roy, so I was checking a lot of his music, and Roy would talk about Arthur Taylor all the time, Lex Humphreys. So over time, I'm just listening to everyone, trying to understand all these guys, trying to know them. Like Neil Smith told me, get 3 records on each of these drummers, and once you get 3 records, you start to really be able to tell people apart. And like, I'm a huge recorded music nerd. So I love blindfold tests. Who's playing bass on this Horace Silver record? Who is it? Who knows? But anyway, throughout. So then I started playing at Dizzy's. Started getting more into like the roots of what that stuff, the 50s and 60s were. So now I'm checking out the 40s and the 30s and trying to understand the drummers that influenced Tootie Heath. And I would talk Tootie Heath, and he'd talk about Sid Catlett and Specs Wright and Kenny Clark and just the more you get on the journey, you start to fill out your timeline. I always talk about the timeline. So for me, drumming at that point, once I started doing a big band, I wanted to figure out how to use a 20-inch bass drum instead of just a little 18, because that bass drum, once you get above an 18, you kind of have to use it differently, especially if you're playing in a dance band. It becomes more of it's got to be real solid. You can't be throwing bombs here and there. You make people fall over. You get sued. So anyway, I'm starting to learn more about the roots of the drums, and then cymbal wise, I was attracted to a lot of the darker cymbals. Some of the first cymbals I had were like Kenny Washington Bounce Ride. I had Bill Stewart Dry Complex Ride. I liked Lewis Nash's old A, so I got a few old A's that were kind of like that brighter sound. And then I was checking out the cymbal that Higgins and Ed Blackwell used, the Pice D22 blue label with a bunch of rivets. That's been like going and trying on different kinds of clothes. It's like they're like different styles, and you can do different things with them. They're very, the ride cymbal is like a very stylistic thing, so these days, like Michael was saying, I like the Pice D. I got a 20 with no rivets and a 22 with rivets, and these are some thick, bright cymbals. And when you hear them, they kind of just are right on top of everything. And I always think about the ride cymbal like a light that everybody can see. You got to be able to always see the light to know where the time is. It's a guide, the ride cymbal. And these Pisces are some real happy, bright lights that, especially playing on the street where there's cars whizzing by and God knows what, they they give a happy sound, and especially when you're trying to play the cymbal, it's good to have an unforgiving, like like everybody can whack they say wallop a K Constantinople, right? Everybody can just go whah, like as hard as you can, and it'll be like whoa, crash, boom. But you can't do that with these Pisces or old A's. It'll be very harsh sounding. So, the Kenny Clark, the clarity of the ride cymbal, where it's just you're tipping. Roy would say, yeah, tip, just tip. Quarter notes. So that's kind of where I've been at recently, and also I've been at more trying to get better full strokes out of the drums and not use so much bounce and fingers. But what I'm finding is that there has to be a good mix if you want to play the different dynamics. But even at a soft tempo, to use your wrist and not just use your fingers and rely on the bounce to really give every beat your wrist, instead of I would do this. I would use my fingers a lot just because you're trying to play soft dynamically, but then I think you lose a bit of the sound and clarity and projection, that when you play and you're using your hand, it's more clear. Therefore, everybody's gonna have a much better time because they'll be able to actually tell where that light is. So I'm just trying to be clear and play the drums with honesty and not just like, bullshit.
Yeah. I remember we spoke about this on the phone, actually, about being clear, and clarity is the most important thing with it. You made a point earlier about how older guys, you said, like Kenny Clark, would play mainly just with the tip of the stick. And you were talking to me also about how you saw some more vintage sticks, and you noticed that on the sides of them there weren't as many ridges. So could you talk about that a little bit, about how nowadays guys maybe are crashing more than they used to, just because, right? Because you were saying that was an observation you made by checking out more vintage sticks, and these sticks were super clean on the sides.
Wow.
Well, yeah, the touch that people play the drums with has evolved a lot. People talk about the 70s as the cymbal holocaust, where all these cymbals started getting cracked because the rock and roll aesthetic was, people are crashing the cymbal. In the earlier days, the venues weren't as big. They were playing in small rooms, acoustic bass, acoustic piano. It's just like it was made for everyone to be really sensitive with each other, and those instruments were made for that. And then as time goes on, now we start to get thicker cymbals. We start to get different kinds of drum heads, plastic heads instead of calf. Different, more heavy duty hardware. No more strap bass drum pedals. Now we have a metal chain on the bass drum pedal, and everything has become like, heavy duty. And that's part of how we've evolved just as a civilization with our music and our equipment. And same thing with saxophones, right? Like old saxophones and then new saxophones. They're just built
They're
to
very
have
different,
a different, yeah. So, and then stick wise, like I have these Regal tip right here.
They don't make them anymore, right?
Yeah, oh god, yeah. These are so precious. I'm trying to show you. Okay,
What kind of
so
sticks are those?
these are Regal tip 5Bs.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get in the picture. Okay, so you see the shape near the tip, how it's like kind of tapered a little bit.
Maybe bring it a little closer to the camera.
Okay, you see that? I mean, this is kind of a beefy stick still,
Yeah.
but see how there's like the shape, like there's a taper, right, at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives this elasticity to the stick, and and also the tip, the shape of the tip, that kind of round oval. It almost looks like a baseball bat, like this stick. Regal tip 5B, and then the bottom. Oh God, I can't get this camera thing.
It's cool, man.
Okay, so there it is. I endorse Vic Firth, by the way. Sorry. Anyway, but listen, this is the old school. This is the old school stick, and Vic Firth, they're making some sticks. They're trying to get something closer to this. And I have some like really old sticks that have like a really, I call it like kind of a sexy shape. It's like real curvy, and it makes the elasticity on the cymbal and the drums. It makes it bounce really naturally. And now sticks are like up here. They don't make them as skinny because people will break. It's very
Yeah.
if you start crashing a lot with that, this is gonna crack off in like a week. So
Yeah.
people's attack and touch on the drums has changed. Like pop drummers playing in large stadiums, they have to use this part of the stick more. You know, the shoulder. Dave Weckl was just talking about it. Did you see that, Mike? There was a video, Dave Weckl, in November, late November. Dave Weckl did this thing, and he's talking about the tip to the shoulder on the hi-hat. You know, so he's going tip the shoulder, tip the shoulder.
Are you talking about the free like 1 hour lessons he's been doing on Saturdays?
It was free. Yeah, it was free.
Yeah. No, I've
That's
checked
why I
out.
saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, those are very cool, actually, and a lot of people tune into those. But yeah,
Yeah, I
no, it's
just saw it
great.
like a couple days ago, a replay.
Yeah, he has a few of them on YouTube.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a guy like that who came up playing in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
He obviously had to advance. He couldn't just play like how Kenny Clark was playing, obviously. But there's a place for all of it, I think, in music in the world. I think people need to see the swing. Roy would just say like people are allergic to the swing now.
Yeah.
And it's true, like everyone's allergic to it. But
Wynn says that too.
yeah, but the swing is to me it's less of like a style, and it's more of a way of being really basic with our human interaction and everyone fitting in together. Like these people didn't just create this for us to look at it as being old. Like they made these revelations. Dizzy Gillespie, the revelations he made, they made them so that we can enjoy them as well. You know, these are ways of communication, vocabulary that are to be embraced. Otherwise, our history. Frank Lacey says, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
I think I've
So
heard
you
him
make
say that one.
we'll make the same mistakes if you don't learn about the way that cats came up.
Yeah. I I want to make a point about this conversation I had with John Riley, actually, where he had Mel Lewis's hi-hats that he would use, and for the Village Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, but he was explaining how just over time the band itself got louder. as well. And like when you were talking about like in the 80s and how things just, you know, turned up, like people are gonna break those sticks if they use them. You know, people have to play louder. Like you think electronically is the reason why, but the Village Vanguard Jazz Orchestra is still acoustic, yet it John Riley, who's the current drummer for, you know, past 25 years, has told me that it just got louder overall, the acoustic band, since when the band first evolved. So he said that when he would use the hi-hats, they would invert, which is how hard he needed to push down them. So that's why, you know, thicker cymbals, just in general, I guess just the music has gotten louder compared to what it used to be. And guys like Kenny Washington and by the way, like the way you play, and you were talking about the wrist, that's something that Kenny Washington talks about a lot as well, with using your wrist on everything to get, you know, a nice stroke. And he always talks about how drummers play too loud in the clubs, and they're playing too loud that you can't even hear them in the back of the club because they're not getting a good sound. And if you got a good sound and it projected, then you'll be able to hear it everywhere nicely.
Wow. But the Vanguard band doesn't. Do they play totally acoustically?
Well, they have a bass amp, and they have the piano going through the PA system, and they probably have some solo mics.
Yeah, I mean,
now.
I was wondering what you said about playing with Ron and how much you had to think about how the balance between the bass drum and the bass and things like that. And then you were talking about monitors, and we have mics and PAs, and it's like, okay, so it sounds good right there, but then it's kind of like on the sound guy. Like, you don't even know what it sounds like in the house a lot of the time. And I think I mean, Winton talks about this to the end of the day, you know, like the importance of playing like actually acoustically and like balancing in the group, but it doesn't happen really that much anymore. Even the Vanguard band, I think, you know, like Evan said, they're playing through PAs.
Well, I've had experience playing with acoustic gut string bass players like Ben Wolf and Neil Kane and Russell Hall. That they've all had phases where, and we played countless gigs where they have no mic, no amp, and we could be playing in a little restaurant, or we could be playing in a little club, Mesro, or wherever, or Dizzy's on a night where they don't have sound.
Dizzy's, really?
Yeah, I mean, when they on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, they usually don't even have a sound guy. You know, so the bass can't. A lot of times
they like it that way, huh?
Well, you save the budget. So that is great experience to have the experience of playing with an acoustic bass, and then your cymbal will in those situations. I find I like the sound of the K's with the acoustic bass because it blends. They both have a little more wood, you know, like an old K with some rivets or something, or an old A, because they have a more natural sound. And I think the reason that I like these brighter cymbals now is because if you're playing with a bass player that's playing in an amp, and I think this is what happened with Billy Higgins is in the late 60s, early 70s. Bass players had a new sound. So like I went to rehearsal with Ron Carter, and I played one of the OKs with his bass, and he has a little bit more high end in his bass sound. And I noticed that the old K just didn't sound as good as it did with the acoustic bass. So then you take like a 19-inch Armand ride or the Paiste 602s, and they have this more electric compatibility with the DI bass sound. You listen to Sam Jones in the 70s and Billy Higgins' cymbal, it's so good. Sounds nice together. It feels amazing, right?
Eastern Rebellion.
Yeah. So I don't think I think that's just part of what I think about. Like if I know I'm playing with acoustic bass, I'll bring maybe a darker cymbal. If And then if I know that things need to cut a little bit more and people need to see the light a little more clearly, maybe a brighter symbol. But I
Wow.
like to have a bright and a dark symbol. If I'm fortunate enough to bring two symbols to a gig these days, I like to have one dark symbol and a bright symbol. So if I need to darken things up, go over here. Brighten it up, go over there.
Wow.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about getting into to know the daily life of Evan Sherman. How much consistency do you find in your days? What routines do you like to keep up to stay sane in these COVID times?
Well, I'm very lucky to live with my lovely girlfriend Sylvie, who is a classical pianist, and I'm always thankful that I get to hear her practice. She just quizzed me the other day. I knew all 5 Beethoven piano sonatas by her playing. I could tell her if it was the second one, the fourth one, fifth. I'd never thought I could do that. Um,
Wow.
so we live together, and she's always practicing. And when she practices, I usually am looking after the house a little bit. Clean. Um, we both cook. Um, Yesterday, I practiced all day yesterday, and then at 6 was like, all right, I'm gonna cook, and then it took about 45 minutes for me to cook some chicken wings, green beans, and brown rice, and
Delicious.
Killing.
yeah, and had some leftovers today. So and then earlier I practice. I wake up and try to practice on the drum pad. Maybe play along with some music. Especially nowadays, like I miss just being able to play with people every day. Like I have been playing with people all the time. I didn't even realize how much of blessing that was. But now in the winter months, we're back to the quarantine life, and so yeah, I mean playing along to like drumless records or records with drums. So I sometimes I start on the piano actually in the beginning of the day just to warm my ears up. Sometimes I can't go right to the loud ass drums. Um, so I'll play the piano, and once I reach my frustration threshold on the piano, I'll move over to the drums. And then when the drums start to beat my ears in my head, I'll take a break. Philly Joe Jones, there's an interview with him saying he would practice in like 45-minute spurts. So, that's kind of
Wow.
healthy. Sometimes, to give your ears a rest. So I find that can be helpful depending on the situation. And then I also now have a bass in the house, um, thanks to Mario, who's lending me an acoustic bass. And I a lot of times at night when it gets too late to play the drums, I go on the bass. And you can play bass pretty much any time. I have a nice little room that I know the downstairs neighbor, he doesn't get bothered by sound from this little room for the most part. So um, and then of course, while I'm cooking, I usually have a record. Sometimes I'll listen to the same record like twice in a row or something. I've been really into Blue Note these days, like Rudy Van Gelder, Blue Note Records. I think those guys are playing with such purity and play so well together, and the music is so it's free of it's just real just feels good to me. It's not gimmicky. And then
Yeah,
of
for
course
sure.
I like 70s music as well, and I like to listen to everything. But just recently, I'll turn on like a Blue Note record that I never heard because there's so many that I've never heard, and I'll listen to it like twice in a row, and then maybe by the end of the cooking, I'll have listened to that, eat, and then sometimes I'll go back to practice, or my lady and I will watch one of our favorite shows together or something. Um, so yeah, there's endless things. I love music, but it is important to keep things balanced and to so you have a little something to bounce off from, you know? It's like you can't just I've gone crazy many a time just from nonstop music.
Mm. Yeah, you're definitely uh, a guy I know that his life is so invested in the music, and I really admire that about you and how seriously you take it. Is there anything specifically that you're working on now, or you want to try to improve on as a musician, or specifically a drummer?
Yeah, I mean, it's always I always have to break things down to basics. Um, playing the ride cymbal as best as I can, different dynamics. Um, trying to use more wrist and less fingers, I guess. Um, like how the old drummers did it. They had this other approach that I'm still trying to learn more about. And I think it just it 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 makes you into a very, like, once you have the ability to play a lot of these simple things, when it comes to the heat of the moment, you'll be better. I'm not, when you're playing, you don't really think, you're just kind of reacting. And if you put time in doing this and making sure your wrists are being efficient, there's a book called Wrist Twisters. That's like a classical snare drumish kind of thing. And that one is really just like all about the mechanics and no muscle tension. And to me, when I listen to my favorites, you could tell that they're feeling good. They're relaxed. Their body is relaxed. That's why they're producing such a nice sound. So, yeah, I'm always thinking about my posture on the drums and how it feels on the pedals and how I'm set up. And it's just it is harder now because we don't have the stages, as you know, they're not happening right now. It's a pandemic. So it's harder for all of us musicians to work on this stuff. So we have to try even harder. Um, Luckily, I'm trying to play as much as possible in a safe way. I'm not crazy about going into little rooms with groups of people at the moment. Um, but you got to do what you got to do to keep playing, and hopefully, and the people I have been playing with, like on the street, like I'll probably go out actually the next 2 days. Um, NBC is going to film on Friday us playing outside. So um, I have that to look forward to, and you put the practice into play there, and then once you play the gig, you now know what you have to work on for next time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the greats are the greats. That's what they were doing. Every night they had a gig. It's a workshop. It's the
A test.
to me, yeah, it's so-called jazz is it's the process. It's not the it's not the destination. It's like the process.
Yeah.
So when you're playing and you may be like, oh, I wasn't able to pull that off or something. I gotta shed this, or that kind of stuff is the life, a little bit about life as like doing what we're doing, trying to play music. And yeah.
Even going back to Dave Weckl, you were talking about that video that you were watching, and I saw that too, and I don't know if we saw the same one, but he was saying how just like the first play along that he plays, to show everyone how he plays, it's just a play along in the beginning, and this guy is used to playing concerts and gigs and stuff, of course. And yeah, so he was just saying yeah, like at least I have, something to play for people, this little opportunity, just a play along, but at least that gives me more of a motivation to get my chops together, because he was saying how he spends a lot of time nowadays at the mixing board, because he's also quite oh, Where's that my phone?
Is it you?
Yeah, I don't know where it is though.
Yeah, that's
But
cool.
but yeah, I don't know if can you hear that?
Oh yeah, I hear a little buzz roll in the back. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so just having that playing opportunity is oh my god, is that where yeah, having that playing
Must
opportunity
be a
though is
tornado.
yeah. Having that playing opportunity though is
That's a
super
joke.
important to have something to strive for. So
That makes me think about something. Jerry Dodgen told me that when Benny Carter was like on his deathbed, he went to see him in the hospital, and he wanted Jerry Dodgen to perform Isfahan for him. And
Wow.
yeah, apparently he used to play it for him, and Jerry Dodgen called it Isfahan. Everybody, all of us, we say Isfahan. He called it Isfahan. Um, but he said he talked to Benny Carter about writing all the music. Because, I mean, if you think about all the music that a lot of these guys wrote, Benny Golson or Benny Carter, um,
Yeah.
I mean, these
Jeez.
guys wrote for TV, movies. They just had so many jobs. So apparently Benny Carter said, "Hey, if I never had a deadline, I wouldn't have written anything." So, like you're saying, Michael, if you have this thing to look forward to, that's the inspiration, and that is why artists are such a reflection of our society. So in these times now where artists have to fight even harder to do what we're doing, as in compared to how we used to have, we usually just go to a club, play, fly here, go on tour. Now it's different. So I'm optimistic that our generation will get some new big muscles from this time, and our technological skills will be better. um, we'll have had to fight harder for this, and it will add
That's
some
true.
weight to the art. That's what I'm hoping.
mm, yeah, that's a very good point.
Here's to that.
Definitely the technological skills will be upped from this.
Yeah, but we can't lose our humanity in the technological stuff, right?
No,
No.
yeah.
That's what Ron does. Brought the amp and made it killing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Evan. I think, yeah, we're over a couple hours now, and we really got into some pretty remarkable, nuanced stuff about deep in the music. I've learned a lot from hearing your breadth of knowledge and your experiences with these great elders. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We'll do one last little question round,
Sure. Yeah,
Cool.
and then
we'll do a 90-second flash round where we'll just ask you a bunch of quick questions
Okay.
all right.
or a bunch of weird riddles as it has turned into from Austin.
Okay.
Not oh wait, a minute 30, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
brain is not working, huh? All right, starting now. You got it, Mike.
Okay. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yeah, why? Maybe sometimes.
Okay. You go.
What's your favorite Frank Lacey quote?
That's a good one.
Oh, he does an impression of Art Blakey singing Casper the Friendly Ghost that I can't do it, but that's one of my favorite ones at the moment.
That's so random, but so Frank.
Yeah. Last TV show or movie that you watched?
I've been watching The Blacklist. Shout out to Reddington, and yeah.
Favorite Shakespeare play or sonnet?
Romeo and Juliet.
Nice. What is the last record you listened to when making chicken wings, I guess?
I think it was this Hank Mobley with Cedar, Ron, and Billy Higgins. Let me look at the name. Far away lands.
Oh, yeah. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name, like the actual first word that comes to mind when you hear the name Kenny Washington?
Ride cymbal.
All right. All right, Evan. Thank you so much. To anybody who tuned in live for this whole 2-hour thing filled with cymbals and sticks and many
Much good knowledge.
many beautiful stories.
Yes.
You're all troopers. Wow. Have a great night. Evan, I'm just gonna send the live stream to the outro, and then we'll have a proper goodbye. Just 1 minute here. Thank you, everybody. Night.
Thank you.